Hi everybody, Dr. Bob here to talk to you today about preparing to take tests. So tests are not something you should be preparing for the night before. Okay, when we're looking at how we plan our life to take tests, it should be broken down into two main parts. The things that you're going to be doing before test day and the things that you're going to be doing the day of the test. So prior to the day of the test, preferably in the weeks before the test occurs, you need to set up a plan. Planning out your studying is discussed in an earlier video on time management, which I would encourage you to take a look at. And the plan for each class is going to vary depending on the class. Some classes you might be able to get by and be successful planning the week before the test begins. In the classes that I teach, for instance, I teach anatomy and physiology classes to people who want to go into the allied health fields. And I tell students, even in a non-test week, you need to be studying 10 to 12 hours per week. And that's even in the weeks that don't have a test. In fact, this is going to be way more effective if you start studying after your previous test, preparing for the next one in the weeks that lead up to it. Okay? And what you want to get is the day of the test, you want to be able to walk into the test and say, I know this stuff thoroughly. You want to feel confident in the way that you've studied, and you want to walk in and be able to own that test. You want to show the teacher that you really know your business. Now that you've set up a plan for taking your test, the next thing you want to think about is what's going to be on the test that you really need to be studying. So if your teacher isn't clear to you about the topics that are going to be on the test, you need to ask, what types of things do you need to be studying? You also need to find out about the test format. Is it going to be a multiple choice test? Is it going to be a fill-in-the-blank test? Is it going to be an essay test? In my classes, I always include at least one essay to ensure that students really know the material thoroughly. And if you know the format of the test, you're going to be able to study because each different type of test requires a different study strategy. And then the smart student is going to be preparing by practicing the taking of tests. If you know it's going to be a multiple choice and an essay test, you can find multiple choice questions and you can find essay questions from your teacher and you can practice taking them. The more you practice, especially putting yourself under the simulated stress of taking the test, the easier the test is actually going to be. Now, where do you find these questions? Well, questions are pretty readily available at the end of textbooks. Sometimes teachers will have test banks that are available for students to practice. Online resources like Quizlet will often have test questions available, although I would caution you to make sure that the answers are correct before you use them. And then finally, if you can't find any other test questions anywhere else, make them up yourself or get with a group of people and have everybody chip in 10 questions, and all of a sudden you've got a great bank of questions that you can be practicing with. Now, in the day before the test, you want to make sure that you get plenty of sleep. Okay, too many times students will try to pull an all-nighter the night before a test thinking that they can cram that information in, and what ends up happening is you're exhausted, and the exhausted mind is not very effective at test taking. Okay, you want to make sure that you're eating healthy, but you don't want to eat too much. Right? You don't want like a Thanksgiving dinner that's high in tryptophan so that you're feeling sleepy afterwards. You want to do something to exercise. You want to find something else that's a good stress reliever. You can use these especially as a reward for using good study strategies up to this point. And then finally, by the time you reach the day before the test, you shouldn't be studying. You should be reviewing. Because by this point, you've put in your time, you've scheduled your time, you've studied, and you should know the material thoroughly and just be reviewing. So on test day, you want to make sure that you are awake, you get to school early, and you walk into class and you take a few minutes to breathe and relax, and maybe if you want to do a short review of the material. Okay, once the test has been passed out, you want to scan the test over, you want to see what types of questions are on it, and you want to come up with a plan. So perhaps you want to start working on the multiple choice questions first, and then tackle the essay questions last, or however you choose to do it. But it's important as you're doing this that you allow enough time to complete the test. So if you know your class is 50 minutes, you want to make sure that you dedicate some time for multiple choice questions and some time for the essay questions if that's the format. Okay? A big mistake that students make is they spend too much time on one part, feel that they're behind, and then rush to finish another part, and it's in the rushing that we sometimes misread and make mistakes. Okay, I encourage you to work on questions that you are really confident in first. Okay, answer those, and then you're going to go back and attack the harder stuff. And if it's possible, try to leave time at the end for you to go back and double check your work. And this is kind of tricky, but sometimes teachers will accidentally put the answers to some questions in the text of other questions. So look for hints that were accidentally, or sometimes purposely, put into the test. Alright, so you're taking the test. What types of things should you know about multiple choice questions? Well, I can't emphasize this enough. If you've got a multiple choice question, take your hand, take a piece of scratch paper, read the question, but cover up the answers. Then start thinking about what the answer to the question is before you even see the possibilities, and compare what you think the answer is to what your choices are. Oftentimes, the thing that you think is the answer will be very clearly one of the options to choose from. Okay, when teachers make tests, often, not always, but often the strategy is to have one answer that is completely correct, one or two answers that are in the ballpark, and then one answer that is completely wrong. So, good thing to do would be eliminate the one that is completely wrong, and then try to eliminate the ones that are kind of sort of there, and hopefully if you've done it right, you should have the only thing remaining is the correct answer. So when you're answering true or false questions, important thing to remember is that when you read the question, the entire statement has to be correct in order for it to be true. If there's something in there that makes you think, well, maybe not in this situation that's true, then chances are the answer is false. The other thing to look for would be indicator question or indicator words, such as it says such is always the case, or something is never the case, or it is only the case here. That is sometimes a key that the question is false. For matching questions, I would encourage you to start with the ones that you're absolutely certain of, and then if it's okay to write on the test, cross those out so that you know that those options have been chosen. You can ask your teacher for scratch paper if that might be helpful. And then you use a process of elimination for identifying the other matching questions. Fill in the blank questions. Well, depending on the way the question is set up, it might be just one word answers the question. Sometimes it's a few words. Generally, for fill in the blank, you're not asked to write whole essays. Again, I would encourage you to read the question carefully and also read the directions carefully. It is not uncommon for students to make mistakes because they're feeling a crunch for time or they're putting pressure on themselves, and they read the question carefully and they miss some important instructions. Finally, for fill in the blank questions, you gotta spell things properly. Okay, and how do you practice spelling? Just like when you were in elementary school, you write out the word again and again and again until you spell it correctly. Now for short answer and essay questions, I would encourage you when you're reading the question to look for keywords. So if the question says compare and contrast, they're asking you to explain why two things are similar, that's the comparing, and why two things are different, that's the contrasting. If they say to identify, then you need to identify something. If you're asked to define something, you've got to give the definition. If you're asked to analyze, then you need to explain what's going on there. If you haven't previously practiced an essay, and especially if your teacher will let you write on the test, jot down an outline of what you think your answer should be, and then write your essay around it. Once you're done with your essay, you can go back if time allows and reread it and make corrections if necessary. And I can't emphasize this enough, especially if your teacher tells you what possible essay questions are ahead of time. Practice writing them out. Then, take the practice essays to your teacher or your teaching assistant or whoever you're working with. Let them look at your answer and let them help you see where the good things are that you need to keep. They can also help you find things that are incorrect that you need to fix, or information that you don't necessarily need to include in the essay that will make your essay shorter. If you follow these instructions, you should be in good shape to take your tests. I would remind you, we often say good luck for taking your test, but luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. This is a quote from Seneca, and I'd like to end this video by saying make your own luck by being prepared for your tests, and I'll see you around.